The wide grip pull-up is a legendary mass builder that built the backs of so many great old school natties, and is still practiced to this day with tremendous success. Prepare to blow up your yoke and upper lats by getting more or less weight through terrible leverages. That said, the fact that the intensity is so high is also one of its greatest downfalls, in the sense that it's much easier to accumulate overuse injuries from this variation. In fact, out of all the pull-up grips you can use, this is by far the most dangerous and has historically caused the most issues. Now, I'm not one to fearmonger, and I will say right now that there are no bad exercises per se. It's all about correct load management and proper form. So you can in fact do wide grip pull-ups safely and effectively, which I'll be discussing right now. Just know that you need, like it's literally essential, that you approach this movement with caution. So, the first thing I want to point out is the form itself, specifically the negative portion. I see too many guys treating this like any other grip, where they're explosively pulling themselves up and yanking back into that dead hang position. Normally, this would be fine because you're not in a tightly stretched spot. But with the wide grip version, where your arms are in a V formation, constantly dropping into it can put you out of the game. I would kind of compare it to what old school strongmen used to do, where they would strap their arms to horses or other people, and they would have to resist the forces that were coming out laterally. In this case, it's to your side and slightly up. So I don't want you to just look at the bar itself. It's about anthropometry, where the form is diagonal. So if you're not controlling the descent, basically your armpit area will start to hurt. I'm referring to a spot that's between the long head of the triceps, upper lats, and teres major, which is very hard to describe exactly. Some would maybe even compare it to a tear, but it's the sensation that is just nagging. You feel it all the time, but it doesn't affect your force production. You can still lift heavy, just that it's uncomfortable. So you can still row, do presses, do long head pushdowns. Nothing is going to bother you except for when you're doing vertical pulls of any kind. And if you don't listen to your body, the pain is just going to get worse and worse, where you just won't want to do a single repetition, even if you're capable of doing so. That's the overuse I'm talking about. And what I could say is I've experienced it at least 3 times throughout this year. And the major contributor is going too fast on the way down. So you need to fix that first and foremost. Always stay rigid, maximally squeeze your back, maybe even consider pause reps, and make sure that form is not compromised. This is not an overloading variation, which leads me on to my second point. When technique is dialed in, most people don't need to go weighted on the wide grip pull-up. In fact, even in my situation, where I'll go a little bit over a plate, it's still not necessary. So if you can't get at least 15 clean reps, what are you doing strapping on 25 and 45 pounds? Keep in mind, the mechanical disadvantage will make you almost 50% weaker. I can do 2 plates for reps on all the other grips except for wide. So if you're doing a plate on this, that's already very strong. And unfortunately, I see a lot of guys jumping into that too quickly. And that's when they get hurt. They don't have the tissue capacity, but they think they're able because they've done that with other grips. Doesn't work that way. So for 90% of you, body weight is hard enough. Stick to higher reps, not low reps. Plus, the hypertrophy outcomes are the same. Next, even when you're not ego lifting, I found that you cannot sustain wide grip pull-ups in your program for very long. It has to be rotated in for something that's narrower or at least on the neutral side. So when we talk about maxing out and using a default pulling position, it should always be shoulder width apart or inside. If wide grip is what you primarily do, recovery will eventually be compromised and you might require more deloads. So let's say you have 10 variations of pull-ups. Maybe 3 of those will be with a wider grip, and not even the widest of which you're capable of. The extreme variation should be used sparingly. So we have to differentiate between wide and super wide. Going back to form, I'd strongly recommend that you use a thumbless grip for your wide grip pull-ups. I can't explain exactly why, but it feels way better on the shoulders and lats of all things. I think this is because you're not cranking yourself in more of an unnatural position, which allows for slightly more freedom of the arm path. And I believe Leroy Colbert used to do them like this as well. Actually, he would also scoop his hands over at the same time. This way he was able to maneuver even more. I'm not going to recommend that because it's kind of awkward on the wrist, but crazy that a bodybuilder was using somewhat of a false grip without even knowing it. That said, there's also the flip side variation, which is squeezing really hard, but using a fatter grip. This takes a lot of stress off the shoulders and even elbow area, which a lot of guys will report when they get strong at pull-ups, whether it's wide or close. And because grip will somewhat limit you, that in itself auto-regulates the intensity for the upper back. You're getting a little bit less stress, but that might not be a bad thing considering it's already a little bit too high in some cases. So this could be a great way of deloading while still training that movement pattern and getting stronger overall. Keep in mind, this is still going to improve your performance at wide grip pull-ups. Your form is going to be super dialed in. Your forearms are going to get more jacked. You're still going to squeeze your back like crazy. Nothing to worry about there. But it's certainly a lot easier on the joints. So this is an instant hack that works every single time. Highly recommend it if you don't want to go balls to the wall. Lastly, you can always use rotating handles or gymnastic rings to have a more natural movement pattern. Now you won't be in maximum pronation at all times. So you can use your best pulling mechanics while still getting that biasing effect from that wider grip. Since a fixed bar doesn't move with you, but the handles will, specifically coming inwards from that diagonal angle. So in a way, it kind of feels like a pull in, but now it's body weight only. You're creating a bit more space in the bottom. If the stretch is too intense, feel free to rotate those hands. And at the top, you get a great contraction while being able to adjust your form on the fly as you fatigue. So that's another great way of instantly affecting your load management within the set itself. In my opinion, this is the safest version that's practically dummy proof. And surprisingly, it's even more difficult, thus enhancing longevity without compromising gains. Makes sense? You don't have to drop wide grip pull-ups. Just employ these simple solutions and you'll be able to enjoy the many benefits. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to know your feedback. Have you ever gone injured from this variation? Did it always feel off or great? Let's hear it. And I will talk to you all next time.